Hello and welcome to another episode of Simplified, where we're talking about quickshifters and auto-blippers. On Simplified, we take complicated ideas like quickshifters and break them down into small bite-sized pieces that you can use. If you haven't, do hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification icon is a little bit crucial. You should hit it so that you don't miss out on this content when it comes out. So, the latest new thing happening to gearboxes, apart from seamless gearboxes in MotoGP, is the arrival of quickshifters and auto-blippers on ever smaller machines. The biggest difference in terminology between quickshifters and auto-blippers is that auto-blippers can go down the gearbox, whereas quickshifters generally just go up the gearbox, which means some part of your gear change is now automated. Now, if you've ridden motorcycles seriously, you should have heard of clutchless upshifting, which means that I'm riding along, I back off the throttle and I'm able to change a gear without really touching my clutch. First to second, second to third, third to fourth, and all of these gear changes can be made clutchlessly without really damaging the gearbox, because sequential gearbox actually handle clutchless upshifting quite well. Clutchless downshifting, on the other hand, not only does it require a lot of coordination and skill, there is potential for serious damage in there, and that's why most people will tell you that you don't want to downshift clutchlessly, you do want to use the clutch in the process. But gear changes take time. So at a racetrack, an average gear change is about half a second, which means that if, for example, you take an RD350 with 6 gears and a Yamaha RX100 with, say, 4 gears, and you're racing them together, the RD350 is going to lose a lot of time to gear changes simply because it has to make more of them. And the reason why quickshifters were invented was to try and see if this time could be saved. And the mechanism is actually quite simple. It's effectively an automation of the clutchless upshift. So now all you need to do is to unload the transmission just like you do by closing the throttle in some manner, and that's what a quickshifter does. Most quickshifters will cut the spark, which means for that 1 or 2 combustion cycles, it doesn't make any power. That reduces the torque flowing through the drivetrain. That means that the clutch basket, etc., suddenly are unloaded and the shift can go through. Now, obviously, a human being rolling off the throttle, rolling on the throttle, let's say takes half a second. The quickshifter can achieve the same thing in 1 or 2 combustion cycles, which means it can happen in milliseconds. How does it actually work? Now, most quickshifters use some sort of a sensor that tells the motorcycle that you're trying to change a gear. So usually you have a strain gauge. Strain gauges are used in racing quite a bit, but they're uncommon in street use because they're really complicated bits of technology, although it looks very simple. It's like a small electronic circuit that is published or pasted or printed or whatever onto the shift lever. So as you change, it senses the change in the molecular density. That's why it's called a strain gauge, and based on that, it tells the ECU that you're trying to make a gear change. Most common, of course, are pressure-based things where there is a spring inside, and when you try to move the gear lever, the spring changes in length, and that length change tells the ECU that you're trying to make a gear change. What you need to know about quickshifters is that the sensitivity of the gear change is a crucial part of how slick the experience feels, and a lot of expensive systems will allow you to train the system to learn how sensitively you like it. And that means a spring moving by this much or that much could be the difference between you and me in terms of riding style, and triggering a gear change can sometimes be herky-jerky if the sensitivity is off. Many of them will also allow you to adjust how long the system cuts out the ignition for, and a motor which is reluctant to gear change might need a longer interval, whereas a very fast race kind of motor might need a very small interval. So tunability in a quickshifter is always a good idea, although many production systems actually do it so well now that you'll never even stop to think about this. Now, when you add auto-blipping to this, the system becomes a little bit more complicated, because remember, downshifting is actually increasing the speed of the engine, so the strain in the system is going up. So your gear change has to be a far, far more carefully calculated thing. And what an auto-blipper actually does is it blips the engine. And by blipping, we mean rev-matching, which I will cover in a separate episode of Simplified. Please do stay tuned for it. But effectively, an auto-blipper is a quickshifter with a blip function, which means that the ECU can now match revs, and therefore the downshift can happen cleanly as well. If you've seen the evolution of shifting mechanisms, we used to have manual shifts, then we got quickshifters in expensive machines. Now you have quickshifters available in as little as the 390 Adventure, and therefore my guess would be that in another 3 or 4 years, auto-blippers would also become a lot more common, because the function that blips the throttle is actually a very small part of the software that the motorcycle is built around. The crucial thing about the auto-blipper, obviously, is that it can blip the throttle without you intervening, which means that this system does interact with your throttle, and therefore it is a more mission-critical system than just a quick shifter. So, in sum, a quick shifter can make your riding experience quite smooth. A well-tuned quick shifter, and you'll be going to go up the gearbox without having to use the clutch. It can feel extremely pleasant to ride. And if you're in full performance mode, which is where the quick shifter does its best work, this is where they're the smoothest and most effective. In that, going up the gearbox, shifting through a quick shifter can feel absolutely amazing. Are they crucial to your riding experience? I would say not really. On the flip side, an auto-blipper is an interesting piece of technology because being able to go down the gearbox as you're busy, because when you're entering a corner, you have braking to do, you have body positions to adjust, you have the throttle closed, you want to open it, you're looking through the corner, it's a busy time. An auto-blipper can make your life simpler, but again, this is a performance application. So, the summary is, if you have a quick shifter on your motorcycle and you think it's not very smooth, think about how you're riding. These systems were invented for max performance. They don't really do that well at lower performance unless the manufacturer spent a lot of time tuning and validating it. But do you essentially need a quick shifter in your life? Not really. Is auto-blipping a great idea? Yes, but should you be learning to blip, rev match and downshift on your own? Is it an essential skill that you should have on your side? You should. And if you'd like more skill-based simplifieds, please do leave us a comment. If there's more that you'd like to discuss about quick shifters or auto-blippers, please do leave us a comment. And if there's anything else that you'd like to see on Simplified, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and then leave us a comment. Thank you so much for watching.